Morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Monday, February the 10th, 2025, day 1083 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and in last night we saw the Russian Federation send 83 drones at the territory of Ukraine. They were all intercepted, either shot down like the 61 you see here, or taken out with active countermeasures, the other 22. Great shooting from the Ukrainians. Now, we started the week off with another hit on an oil refinery. And I can play this for you here. I think I can. Or maybe I can't. There we go. So you can see the explosion and flames in the distance there. Now, for those of you who speak Russian, you can make a little more sense of that. But as I understand it, they're talking about it's a drone strike, right? They don't know what it hit, but it's on fire. Now, what's on fire? According to Andrei Kovalenko at the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation, is the Afipsky refining plant, oil refinery, which is one of the oldest oil refineries in Russia, processing about 6.25 million tons of crude oil into refined oil products for the Russian military machine every year. Located in Krasnodar Krai, it supports the Southern Military District, which encompasses, in the temporarily occupied territories, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. We don't have a damage assessment yet. The fire is said to still be burning, and we hope to have, by tonight's live, we hope to have an assessment or official word from the Ukrainian Armed Forces regarding the damage. Now, in Kursk, guys, I don't know. There's nothing official coming out of Kyiv. The Russian mill blogger channels are all cheering that they have soundly beaten the Ukrainians back, that the Ukrainians have taken huge losses and are being pushed back. The Ukrainian propaganda channels are all saying that it's a tremendous victory where they had hardly any losses. But we know that there were losses. We've seen the video, geolocated, chronolocated to Kursk. Because the ground has been soft, it appears as though the Ukrainians have had to make their advance on roads, which means they're just as susceptible to early warning and to drone intervention as the Russians are when they make their attacks on the roads. So we just don't know what's going on in Kursk. And I think anybody who claims to is not paying attention. Now, we hope, of course, for the best there, but it's a very confusing time. The fog of war is thick. But the Ukrainians have taken some ground. That much has been confirmed by the ISW, right? And we talked about the ISW report from the 6th. That report has been confirmed as of yesterday, February 9th. According to the ISW, Ukrainian forces have advanced both in Kursk and Vovchansk, taking in Kursk about 25 square kilometers of Russian territory. Now, for their part, the Russians are still focused on the Donetsk advance, and so we see advances for the Russians, according to the ISW, around Velika Novosilka, Toretsk, and Pokrovsk. The big targets, right? Particularly Toretsk and Pokrovsk. The ISW is also reporting that Germany failed to intercept or down any of the Russian drones, the suspected Russian drones, that were found near German military installations where Ukrainians were being trained. And these incidents have happened sporadically over the last 6 months. The most recent having been on January 25th in Germany. The ISW is suggesting that Russia is using technology that it has developed from the war in Ukraine or stolen outright from the Ukrainians, to now attack or work against NATO and NATO interests directly. And so the Russians are right. Any experience, if you're paying attention, will teach you something. The Russians are having lots of experience on the battlefield in Ukraine. They're learning a lot. They're seizing a lot of technology from the Ukrainians, and it seems as though they are employing it to their own advantage in their hybrid warfare against the West directly in NATO countries. That, I think, is the key takeaway from this ISW assessment. The ISW assessment for yesterday also says that Russia continues to leverage U.S. adversaries like Iran and North Korea to offset resource shortages, particularly, of course, North Korea, where we see North Korean artillery on the field, North Korean missiles being lobbed against Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities, and, of course, North Korean troops on the ground in Kursk. North Korean workers, there's a labor shortage inside of Russia. Something like 2 million workers is what the estimate is, that Russia could use about 2 million more laborers if they wanted to get to the production capacity of their factories. They don't have them. So they are importing workers from North Korea, which violates UNSC Resolution 2397, which was passed by the UN Security Council. So Russia voted for this. That is the thing. Russia's a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Bad situation, right? But built into the UN Charter, nothing to be done about it, which is why we see the UN basically impotent in Ukraine. Anything they try to do, the Russians are going to veto. So there's all of these UN resolutions and Security Council bylaws that Russia's voted for and has now thumbed their nose at, including restrictions on buying weapons from North Korea, selling weapons to North Korea, selling oil to North Korea, etc. Right? The list goes on. And so every day, Russia actively works against the stated goals and charter of the UN. Every day. And yet there is nothing anybody seems to be able to do about it. Now remember, that seat on the Security Council is a stolen seat. The UN Charter specifies that seat belongs to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union no longer exists. Right? The Soviet Union is now 15 separate countries. Why does Russia inherit the seat? Only because nobody stopped them when they grabbed it back 30 years ago. That's why. That's the only reason. In my mind, that seat should now be a rotating seat between all 15 former Soviet countries. And Ukraine should be the first one to get it next, in my opinion. Now, on this subject of the 15 former Soviet states, right? Russia continues to use economic and pressure and threats of violence to keep these states in line. There is something called the Commonwealth of Independent States. That's comprised of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Russia. Now, for those of you who counted, that's only 9. What happened to the others? The others have broken away from Russia. The Baltic states want nothing to do, right? Former Soviet republics all. They want nothing to do with Moscow. So they do not participate in this Commonwealth of Independent States. Now, further to this, what the ISW is saying today is that Russia continues aggressive recruitment among the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS. And I listed those countries before. So Russia is aggressively recruiting its forces for its meat grinder assaults, from these former Soviet states. We believe, it is commonly thought, that Putin, were he to call a general mobilization inside of Russia in the current political climate, that it would be the end of him, that it could very well tear the fabric of Russian social society apart at the seams. Now, Zelensky, over the weekend, said a couple of things. One, he said that he's prepared to make a deal with the United States to trade rare earth minerals, or the rights to them, to the United States for weapons and cash. Now, we'll talk about that in 1 second. The other important thing that he said this weekend was that they're ready for talks. Now, and I genuinely believe that that's true. But I also believe that it's true that he will not settle for anything that doesn't guarantee Ukraine's security. And we know that Putin is never going to go along with any of that. Putin is not giving up on Ukraine. Putin is getting more troops from North Korea. Putin is getting more weapons and supplies from North Korea and Iran. Putin is finding ways around the sanctions to get components for weapons from China. And we even just sanctioned a factory in China that was directly producing attack drones on behalf of the Russians and selling them directly to Russia. Now, that's the first documented case, to the best of my knowledge, of a Chinese firm providing lethal aid to Russia. So Russia's leveraging its partners, all of which you'll notice are the U.S.'s biggest enemies. There's just no doubt about it. So he's ramping up conscription in other countries, including North Korea, to drive this war. Putin does not appear in any way to be getting ready for peace. Further, the two big security guarantees that Ukraine wants are going to be vetoed by Russia. Russia will not have NATO peacekeepers in a buffer zone. They won't do it. And they will not have Ukraine join NATO. Without these security guarantees, Ukraine cannot possibly accept any peace agreement with Russia. Russia has wiped its ass with every peace agreement that has come along. Who can trust them? Now, one can look at the current state of the United States in its temporary Trumpian insanity and say, well, how can he count on the United States either? And the fact is, in this transactional, because he did say that, right? He did say he did not believe that the United States would abandon Ukraine. And I think I know the reason why. Rare earth minerals. Lithium, cadmium, uranium, neodymium. Those are all found in some abundance here in Ukraine. And they are needed, right? Like for Elon Musk's car batteries, you need neodymium. For the batteries, you need lithium, right? So, and right now, and here's what's interesting about this quirk of geology. Right now, China has the export monopoly with 70% of the world's known rare earths inside of China. And with Trump's tariff war with China, one of the first things that they did was they stopped the export of rare earth minerals to the United States. So we are desperate because our high technology economy depends on these rare earth minerals. And so we are desperate to find a source. And in this Trumpian dystopian nightmare that we are all living in, where we have a guy in charge who is purely transactional, interested only in his own unenlightened short-term self-interest. In that world, Trump has said to Ukraine, hey, give us what we want, and we'll give you what you want. Now, I'm not a fan of this. Believe me. To me, it looks like extortion. But it's not our call. It's the Ukrainians' call. If the Ukrainians feel that they're getting a fair deal for weapons and the security guarantees that will ensure their continued sovereignty and an end to the war, then how can anybody fault them? You know, the Ukrainians are the only ones bleeding and dying for the idea of democracy. And they've done an awful fucking lot of it. So this, I believe, is why Zelensky said over the weekend he did not believe that America would abandon them. Because he knows that he has something we want, and we have something he wants. And when you're dealing with Trump, that's all you got to know. That's all you got to know. As distasteful as that is. All right, last thing here today. We rarely get this kind of footage. I have shot a little bit. I just don't ever publish it. Of drones being taken out over the skies of Kyiv, which is something I've seen hundreds of times now. It's a near daily occurrence if I walk to the window, which, keep your shirts on. I do more than I should, I know. But it's illegal to shoot that stuff because you could give away anti-aircraft gun positions, right? So for operational security, we never get these kinds of videos. And you will note that all of the markers down below are blurred out. But you can see what I see every night. Right, there's the anti-aircraft fire intercepting the drone. You don't see the drone before the shot because the drones have no lights on them, which is why I found it very amusing when everybody in the United States was so upset about the drones in New Jersey. Because if those drones were in any way malign, they would have turned the fucking lights off on them. You know, the fact that the lights are on means that it's something above board. But the Russians fly these drones with no lights. Of course they do. Anybody would that's trying to do something on the down low. Okay. Whoops. So that's it. That's the news that we are waking up to for Monday, the 10th of February, 2025, day 1083 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and I will see you in tonight's Live at 5. Thanks, everybody.